And now for part 2 of the health episode. In this segment, I talk about 3 of the really interesting products, not necessarily mainstream, certainly not in any of the big booths, that I saw that inspired me in terms of the way they were approaching things. And Bethany and I also talk about the value of attending these conferences and what your options are in terms of considering these big name, multi-day event type conferences versus some of the more specific niche boutique conferences. But here we are, the continuation. We've all heard the phrase, sell benefits, not features. If you've been in any kind of software sales, sell benefits, not features, should be tattooed on people's shoulders before they get a quota. Yes. It should be literally on everybody's, the forefront of their
Don't tell
mind.
me what this button does.
Yes.
Tell me what this button does.
Yeah. But it's about what's the problem I'm solving. So the 3 things I saw, and I've got some video and some screenshots of stuff that I'd like to do to insert here. One was a pair of socks. And not the marketing giveaway type socks that everybody seems to be into, the pink
not
socks.
Not the pink socks.
The pink socks. And
we love the pink socks.
And I did pick up a nice pair of socks from Anaplan. Thank you very much, Anaplan. But these were socks that actually have weave technology in them. They have sensors woven into the fabric. And they're intended for patients with late-stage diabetes. And if you don't know, in late-stage diabetes, what happens is that all of the ends of your blood system start to get clogged up and die off. So you end up starting to lose tissue, blood flow to those extremities of your body, which then affects the nerves there because they're not getting fed oxygen through that process. So you end up with what's called peripheral neuropathy. And unfortunately, for a lot of diabetics who are not well controlled, that can lead to amputations. It can lead to amputations of fingers, of feet, of legs. And in fact, Bethany knows that one of our sort of aunts on my wife's side, her ex-husband had amputations in his face because he didn't look after his diabetes and ended up in that way. Anyway, back to the socks. These socks are amazing because what they do is they're temperature sensing. So the diabetic patient wears them, and if you start to see a deterioration, and because the sensors are woven in, they're all over the sock, they will find areas where the temperature is dropping on the skin in any of those areas and communicate it back to a Wi-Fi hub that is literally like plugged in the corner, and that's communicating back to the care organization to allow you to be able to monitor that diabetic patient who's at risk there. Similarly, there are other use cases. You can use it for when the skin gets too hot, which is an indicator of either phlebitis, some form of infection that's affecting you, or in ulcerations, when you have skin ulcers in older people. And if those start to go hot, that's showing they're getting infected. So again, it's a way to be able to monitor remotely if something is going bad, and so that you can intervene before it goes completely bad and you end up with necrotizing flesh happening to that person. And then again, that leads to bad things for the individual. Worst case, it can lead to sepsis because the infection spreads whole body. But, it certainly could lead to, deterioration in skin condition and possibly amputation there. So I think that was a technology I found really interesting because it was like they understood their problem they were targeting with this. And we've all heard about wearable tech, but this was a wearable tech aimed at a problem. How do you continue to care for these elderly patients at home, letting them be independent, but still keeping an eye on them, but not in an intrusive way? So very, very interesting.
The wearables industry is fascinating because so many people think about it in terms of, well, I have an Apple Watch or an Oura Ring or something, and that's sort of passive, right? Is my Apple Watch going to tell me if I'm having a heart attack? Well, legally, Apple is going to say no, right? But it can monitor things, but it's very much, you're going to use those kind of technologies a little bit more passively, not necessarily to fix a specific problem.
Yeah.
Same with blood pressure cuffs at home, right? You're only going to use them if you choose to. Now, maybe you're going to go, oh, my heart feels weird. Let's take my blood pressure. Oh, it's like 200 over something. Let's go to the ED. But something like those. So I think that's such a fascinating industry, especially how that data then flows into what you and I and a lot of our listeners, most likely the industry, the specific part of our industry that we've been in. How does that data flow in and then get used in a clinical setting? Because it could easily, in 20 years' time, you could have socks, gloves, a whole bodysuit. You could have an eye thing. Like, there could be everything going on that's wearables, right?
Yeah.
So at some point, clinicians are going to be like, this is a lot of data.
Yeah.
And maybe that's where AI comes in once again.
Exactly.
AI is going to say, whoop, this is important.
And I did talk to them about that and said, this is a lot of data. I mean, even from a raw clinical research perspective, this is incredibly rich data to be able to map what is the progress. Anyway, we digress.
Bethany says, if you don't subscribe, I'm not allowed to make any more dad jokes.
Which honestly might be a selling point. But still, subscribe anyway, please.
Yes.
Second company was a British company, because I caught an earful as I was walking by, because I didn't immediately register, what the company did. But I heard an English accent, and I turned around and went, okay, who's that? And then I was, drawn in to the presentation. It's a company called Entia. And they have a fascinating machine. I'm going to do a big alert here and go, this is not Theranos 2. Okay? If you remember Elizabeth Holmes,
get your
single
turtlenecks
drop
out
of blood and I'll analyze 40 different dynamics of your health, etc. This is not that. This is a company formed by bioscientists out of UCL in London, backed by some real serious bioscience investors. Like I'm talking about bioengineering type investors. That's all they do is work in that space. And the device they have, the Liberty, is basically a blood analyzer that, if you think of a complete blood count, that is a very, very basic lab test that is undertaken. And I can guarantee almost everybody in our audience has had a CBC or an FBC if you're in the UK at some point in their life, if not regularly. I get them regularly. My son gets them regularly because of our health maintenance. And that's the thing is, if you regularly have to have a CBC, guess what that means? You have to go to the hospital or clinic. You have to sit there. You have to go in, a phlebotomist pulls blood out your arm and sends it off if you're incredibly lucky. And because the analysis is incredibly quick, that happens in terms of the big machines, the analyzers they have. And so the technology is very, very reliable, because typically if I go, within an hour, I've got my CBC results on my app, my health app, associated with my provider. And I'm sure that's very similar for a lot of you. Unfortunately, in the UK, not so much, but we'll talk about that in another podcast, maybe with a European or a UK guest, about why this technology not able to penetrate and benefit the patients of the NHS. But I digress. In this case, it is. And the use case is very simple. This device, the Liberty, is about the size of a bread maker, a home bread maker that you might have. And it's intended to sit literally on your kitchen counter or on a sideboard or dresser, and to be there. And from a very small, not quite a drop of blood like, Elizabeth Holmes was promising, it will do within a few minutes a full CBC to look at the blood count and what's happening with the various blood cells in that sample that it's pulling. And it does it right there in your home very efficiently, and then transmits the information back to the care provider. What's the use case? Why have they invented this device? If you are an oncology patient who is being treated with chemotherapy for your cancer. One of the things that most of those drugs do is they completely wreck your blood chemistry, particularly your blood cells, because they're trying to kill off the cancer. And as a byproduct, a side effect, they can affect other cells in your body. So patients undergoing chemotherapy require very, very regular CBCs. And I'm talking like 3-4 times a week when they're undergoing regular infusion, because they're trying to work out, are we giving enough of the cancer-killing drug, but not too much that we are killing the other blood cells? And so those CBCs, so that means we already know the stories. Oncology patients undergoing chemotherapy get absolutely wiped out. They get incredibly fatigued and impacted by the side effects of undergoing that treatment. And now you're going to tell them you've got to haul your ass to the hospital, blood labs drawn 4 times a week. That is part of the drain and the impact. And so what Entia are doing is they're basically providing a solution to that. It's already in use by the Royal Marsden and several other oncology providers in the UK. And I look at that as being here was a problem, i.e. the impact on these patients receiving chemotherapy, that they came up with a solution that said, sure, Elizabeth Holmes's vision of doing all this analysis, but let's be very focused about this. Let's take a technology we know is very mature and very reliable, miniaturize it, make it a solution for a particular purpose that affects and directs to this problem. That is a real problem both for the hospitals, because it's expensive to do these lab draws, and it's also very, very inconvenient for the patient who is suffering at that time. So I thought Entia, that was a brilliant niche solution. And I think that I would love to see that be able to come here to the UK, because I asked them, is there anybody in the US with similar devices? And they went, no, lots of people promising, but not delivering, because they're all trying to do the Theranos 2.0. They're trying to do a big batch of assays of tests, rather than being very targeted at what they're trying to do.
Well, and I think it sounds fabulous, right? Anything that can make patients' lives better, I am all for. The cynical side of me asks, okay, but who's paying for this? Because are the insurance companies going to pay for it? I don't know. Are people that have enough funds going to pay for it? Sure, of course. But then are you creating a imbalance in health equity in the haves and the have-nots? So, but I think it's a fabulous concept, and I love that it is so clearly, here is a problem, here is a solution. I love that. What else did you see?
If you're enjoying Haverin About, don't forget to hit that like button. It really helps more people find us.
And of course, subscribe so you don't miss the next bit of blethering. You wouldn't want to do that, would you?
Well, a topic very dear to your heart and your darling husband's heart. Ambient scribing, ambient transcription was everywhere. Yes, the usual suspects. So, Microsoft was there with Nuance. We know your history with that area, as were Abridge and Suki, the 2 big current incumbents. But there was also about a number of others. An Australian company called Heidi Health. There was several other niche players who were there with their take on ambient scribing. And I feel like that area is very saturated now. And it's kind of interesting, because I saw, as I was walking around, this company that I'd seen online their adverts in Facebook ads and various other things. A company called PLAUD, PLAUD. And you may have seen their adverts. They basically have these small transcription devices. And they started off whereby they had like a kind of bug type, a pill-shaped bug type one that you mount on here, and a bit like you would do with a wireless mic for recording. And it basically it captures everything that you say. And initially it was intended for that close proximity. Well, their next generation, they introduced the Note, which is like a credit card size device with more microphones on it. And the intent is there, you kind of put it down and it can capture a conversation in a room area. And they literally had just launched, when I was there, the Note Pro, which is bigger, faster, better microphones, better transcription, basically on from there. These devices are $140 to $190 each. You can go buy one. Just go online, buy one. PLAUD.ai. And you can find those and buy them and use them. And they've got lots and lots of use cases of business professionals and, so people using them to record like rehearsals and stuff like that. Lots of use cases. But they were there because they have seen an increasing number of medical professionals, doctors, coming to them and buying their technology and asking for improvements to their back-end software, because the transcription all happens, obviously, in the cloud. And they've been asking for particular template, or help with building templates for the output to go into, for particular AI routines to be able to process information in a particular way and to bias towards that. And I asked Stella Hall, their marketing lead, who was very generous with their time. I asked her, I said, why is that? Because I said, room is full of all these big enterprise people. And she said, well, yeah, and they all cost hundreds of thousands of dollars for somebody to install, and millions for a health system. She said, the challenge is that even with those devices and those systems, they're typically workstation located or room dependent. If it's in a treatment room or an ER room or whatever it might be, where the ambient mics have been placed to hopefully capture the conversation that's going on. She said, the doctors tell us that's fine, but that's not where I do most of my work. I do most of my work on my feet. And as I'm going around, I'll have a thought in my head and I want to capture it. And so therefore, these doctors are buying these devices on their own. And you understand, PLAUD are SOC 2, they are HIPAA compliant, they've got all the back-end certifications.
It's not like just using Siri.
It's not like using Siri or some of the other technologies. They've invested in this area because they saw this uptake. But again, they accidentally found a problem, right? Because they just were marketing their stuff and people picked it up. I mean, they started as a Kickstarter and on from there. But what they've done is they've stumbled across a problem and they've leaned in. They've leaned in, and now there are an increasing number of physicians who are saying, yeah, I know. We've got Abridge. We've got it embedded in Epic, blah, blah, blah. That's great. I don't live in my consulting room. I don't live in my treatment room. So therefore, if I want to be able to use transcription away from those areas, now, I know the response from those organizations will be, oh, we have an app for that. You can just use your phone. And I said that to Stella. I was smart enough to know that question. And she said, yeah, $1,400 device that is not optimized for transcription. It is optimized to be a multi-use device for all kinds of interesting things. See, like I am the 17 Pro. It's pretty max. But she said, our devices, they're $175.
No. GPT, if you talk into your GPT, it'll cut you off after 5 minutes. It times out. Otter is, I've used Otter, and what I've heard here is the transcription quality. And a little bit of the experience of the product is very different here. Because we have this medical field reaching out to us, we just have a ton of templates available in the summary community that are like, this is a soap. Right? It'll put it into the soap framework for them. This is a psychiatric evaluation template. This is a emergency room session. And so there's just a ton of stuff where we're really excited, and I think all we're trying to do is just talk to more people, learn, understand.
Yeah. Well,
and actually,
I think
if you want to have it on your phone, click it. It clicks right on the back on the Maxi, and it will record everything. And it's even got vibration sensors, so it knows what's happening with the phone. It can even synchronize with the time that you say that you took a photograph or maybe a bit of video. And you can associate that and upload it. And so they're thinking in terms of how can we make that experience more useful, not only to those medical users of the technology. And I think that's the thing, is that we get back to that bigger companies tend to get locked into delivering features, not solving problems. So I've given you 3 examples of companies who are approaching it the other way around. They're saying, tell me your problems and let me help you with engineering and technology that solves that.
Well, and I think what's interesting with all 3 that you mentioned is they are not specific to the big health systems. I am a big supporter of, or a big believer that we need to use healthcare, that healthcare technology can transform clinicians' lives and it can help save patients' lives. What we are doing in our industry is very important, but we are creating, with the cost of some of this technology, we are creating a country of haves and have-nots. And it should not be that you have to be a patient in a major metropolitan city with a big academic medical center or a big multi-state health system. You shouldn't have to go to those places to get care delivered with technology just because you live in a rural area or you live in a small town. I live in a city. It's a small city, and we have some of those big academic medical centers, but my dermatologist, my OB, they are not using the big EHRs. They are not using the big ambient scribe companies because they can't afford it.
Yeah.
They are paying their techs, $12, $14 an hour. That they don't have the money for a whole variety of reasons, right? Which some are geographical, some are political, some are as a whole thing, right? We're not going to get into that. But we still need technology to be able to enable those smaller clinics, those rural hospitals to be able to deliver good patient care. So if it's something like, I can't afford 6 figures for some of these big ambient scribes, but I can afford $150 and $100 a month, whatever their
$300 a year for
subscription
the
is.
transcription subscription. Yeah.
I can afford that. And it's like, okay, does it have all the bells and whistles of some of those big ones? No. Does it integrate into their EHR directly like some of the big ones if you have a big EHR? No.
Well,
But
the funny thing is, and this is where PLAUD are now leaning into it, is they actually do have now APIs, and they are working with some of those vendors to allow their stuff to be able to flow in. Now, again, whole episode we could have.
Let's compare, and I only know this because my husband works for it, the investment that some of the very large companies are making in making their stuff work with some of the very large EHR companies. Like, there's a reason that Oracle is doing their own ambient scribe product, whatever it is that they're creating over there in Nashville, Kansas, DC, wherever Oracle healthcare is based nowadays. Those companies are investing millions of dollars on both sides to make this stuff work. PLAUD is, these smaller companies are never going to compete at that level.
And they're across,
but they don't necessarily have to. If they can just get 80% of the way there.
That's it.
Well,
so I think
interesting.
I would love to pause at this point and ask our users, our listeners, our viewers to maybe comment. You've heard Bethany and I opine about our experience with these kind of events, and if you gotten to that jaded stage, I would say go to the small booths, explore the undiscovered country. You can find the most fascinating things. So I would say that. But tell us, one, what do you think about your conferences? Do you get the most value out of these big industry events for whatever motivations you've got for attending them? I'd love to hear your comments, and maybe we could cover some of those in a future episode. Secondly, where do you get the best value? Is it from these large tentpole events like this, like HELP, like HIMSS, or is it actually for more discrete conferences? Or actually, have you given up on the technology conferences and you're just more interested in the business of healthcare? Tell us what your favorite platform to go and get your insights and aha moments are. And I'd really be interested to hear people's opinion on that, because I think that there are lots of reasons to be, jaded about some of these events. It's very easy to get cynical about them. But I still really enjoyed going there for lots and lots of different reasons. And I think the fact that I was able to find these three companies that sparked my excitement was, part of the fun of why after 35 years, I mean, I'm attending my first HIMSS while still living in the UK in 1990 or something like that. And so from that perspective, I genuinely have been going to them for a very long time, but I still enjoy it. It's hard. It's long days. It was 16 hours on that first day, from leaving the hotel room to getting back into the hotel room. But it's still, I got an enormous amount out of it. And I'd love to hear your thoughts about that. So please leave a comment. And if you've got any ideas of topics that we should cover related to this, then that would be great to hear too.
Yeah. Well, no, because I didn't go this year, and it's interesting. I was thinking like, am I going to have FOMO, fear of missing out, and I didn't.
Yeah,
I had JOMO, which is the new joy of missing out. It's like it's okay to not go and to not want to go. I kind of was more in that boat.
Yeah,
and I think it's because I've been to enough, and it's fine. But I think it also goes back to what is the purpose of going to the conference. And you see that in all of the LinkedIn posts that come out afterwards, right? There are two. One is the influencers and the networking people that go.
I'll tell you about the influencer pen.
These
events, yes, all of these events typically have a media center. Normally, it's some ballrooms tucked at the back of the convention space, and there's somewhere for them to go and do their copy. And in the old days, when you went and wrote up your copy, and they still do. So they have that. So they had that, but they had like many little TV booths and things like that they had created, little studios for a number of the kind of anchor sort of like news organization. But then they had an influencer pen, and it literally was. I've got some great video of the puppy pen, which is
Love the
a
puppy
great
pen.
distraction on the main floor. And I just hope the doggies don't get stressed out by being in there, but I'll put some video in of that. But the influencer pen was very similar. Didn't have a picket fence. But
you go in and pet an influencer to calm down?
You could, because there's basically this kind of like 3-foot wall all around. So you could see in. And there was these like sofa type seats, kind of just like the usual conference, soft seating all around there and tables. And I know I shouldn't say this being now a podcaster and a video caster, etc. But it was so funny to see all of these younger influencers there with their ring lights and their cameras and their stand. And they're there, and the girls were made up, and the guys were, beautifully coiffed in terms of their haircut and everything. And they're there, and they're talking very earnestly, and they're, talking, and it was so funny because you did feel like, walking up behind them and going. But I didn't. I resisted that temptation, knowing how much hard work goes into this.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, and they do work hard. But I felt like those were the posts I saw afterwards. Either top 10 things I learned at health, and it's like lots of selfie and like
listicle.
Walking down the booth. Yeah, love them. I have no issue with the listicle. I love them. Anyway, so it was either those posts or it was posts of people who were clearly in the booths. And it was usually like some selfies with their team, like everyone from the booth, like, ooh, let's take a photo. Team photo, love a team photo. It was some photos of them meeting up with past peers. And I like seeing that because I like seeing all my old friends, all my old colleagues. That's lovely. Maybe a nice photo of like a drink they had or some cool networking reception somewhere funky that they went to. And I love that. And I think that's where the FOMO comes in, right? No one has FOMO of standing in a booth and being like, hi, let me talk to you about blah, blah, blah. No.
Or the 45 minutes waiting for your latte at Starbucks. Which
like no one has FOMO of that. Or of like, oh no, I stayed out till 12:05 and now it's 6 a.m. and I got to get up and shower. It's missing out on the networking side, right? But I've got to say, like, I just got an email today. So I am the sole US full-time employee for a European company. And so I have money that I can spend on marketing and stuff here. And I got a email today being like, you've been approved for the Startup Pavilion at ViVE. I was like, okay. And I don't think it's a secret. If it is, the ViVE police can email me or blacklist me. $5,000. Interestingly, the price goes up on one of two dates in the emails that were different. So I don't know what's going on there. But $5,000 for a kiosk and 2 tickets to ViVE. Okay, that's fine. But it's in LA. I'm in Atlanta. It's just me, so I only need 1 ticket. I doubt they'll give me any money off because I only need 1. So I'd fly in someone else to help me, a part-timer, a contractor, family friend, whatever. But it's in LA, so that will probably be like $2,000 of travel. It's a hotel in LA. It's LA, so you really need to figure out an Uber or rental car or taxi, or it's a little bit more complicated than just Vegas, where it's like, okay, I can walk everywhere in Vegas. I don't need to rent a car or plan on taxi money. So it'd probably be, and then we need swag and stuff, you need stuff to give away. So it'd be a $10,000 investment, right?
Yep.
Minimum. That's not a huge amount of money. And, if I got 1 customer out of it, I would more than have ROI, right?
Mm-hmm.
But is anybody going to be there that would buy my specific company's product? Probably not, because we're targeting smaller clinics, and so probably not. Would it be great for brand awareness? Yes, definitely. Will my little 1 startup kiosk in a sea of startup kiosks get that much attention and brand awareness? Probably not.
Yeah.
Would I rather take that $10,000 and spend $2,000 going to a Georgia very specific state conference for ambulatory surgery centers or pain clinics or one of the specialties we're targeting? Yes. 100 times yes, because there will be people there who would want to buy my stuff. And the brand awareness there, I'm not competing with 1,000 booths or 50 other startup kiosks. It's a lot. So in terms of conferences, you really have to think like, yes, would I love to go and could I justify spending that money? Sure. But
what's the return? And I think it comes back to what I said earlier on. 3 reasons to attend these events as a vendor. 1, brand awareness. That really only matters if there is some awareness of your brand already. If you're a startup, you're just going to get lost in the noise. Nobody is going to pay attention, because those of us who have been going to conferences for a very long time, we see the names come, we see the names go. We see the names come, we see the names go. And it's like a constant churn of new entrants coming in and on from there. So therefore, there is a cynicism by a number of the attendees as to, sure, that doesn't grab my attention unless you're already on my radar, in which case I might stop and pay some attention to you. So brand awareness only works if you're one of those biggies, or you are well known enough that people are seeking you out. Number 2, in terms of lead gen, that's your point, needs to be very targeted. You need to know the audience you're selling to are going to be there. Just going and padding out your Salesforce database with a whole bunch of leads from using the scanning machines. Scanning machines are an evil introduced by these conference event organizers and marketing departments, because what it does is it increases the volume contacts I get. But in the old days, like,
you're going to do it back in my day.
Back in
my day.
I had to get my salespeople that if they had a contact and they wanted it to be converted into a lead and they wanted it to count towards their tally of like who generated the most leads, they had to take a piece of paper that was already printed up and they had to capture the contact's information. Normally that was staple a business card to them in those days. And then they had to write what the interest and the outcome of the conversation was and what the follow-up was. There were 3 boxes on the form that said that. And they had to fill them in. And if they didn't have the 3 boxes filled in, the lead went in the round recycling bin. Because if there's no context to this, it's just a name, an address, a telephone number, or an email address. It doesn't actually do anything other than, well, here's somebody for us to spam in our marketing. Now, marketing might love that in terms of growing their database and maybe even justifying to the people that they're trying to secure budget from to keep going next year and to keep hiring more designers and people to do cool things with and to pay event organizers. That's what marketing and event organizers do, is that's their life. And if they don't have that, they don't exist. So I get it from that perspective. But in terms of the meaningful output from that, with all of these badge scans, I think Bethany, you and I have both been on the receiving end of, hey, we went to event X and here's 300 and these 20 belong to your region or your territory, etc. And then you have as the salesperson, you have the unholy job of having to reach out and trying to get the follow-up attention of these people, including getting the very, the kind of rude cease and desist emails when you try to spam them once too many times. And it's like, we used to, as a sales leadership team in one of the companies I was in, we used to go back to the CMO with a report that said, you gave us 200, let's say. We actually were able to speak to 6 people who were interested in a continuing conversation with us. So in other words, your conversion rate, in your funnel, great. You got 200, you were able to justify this was a terrific event. You sent out an email about it. But actually, there were only 6 meaningful leads came out of that. And I think that's one of those things whereby occasionally you have to pass back. Have you?
I have
an idea.
I know. I have an idea.
In America, we say like and subscribe.
In Scotland, we say, don't be a numpty, just press the button.
I have an idea. Take the PLAUD concept, but for conferences. Put every single person in your booth, give them a microphone. And then as they scan, this is a great idea. Someone should take this and make me
We'll send it to Stella, and she might give us a free PLAUD.
No, but seriously, because that is my biggest bugbear in conferences. When you'll see one of your other reps or one of your reps having a conversation with someone for 15 minutes, and you walk by and they're talking about that. They're talking about the product. They're not just talking about like the game or whatever they're doing tonight.
Yeah.
It's a real conversation. And then you come back and you're like, whoa, that was great. And they're like, yeah, they're really interested. And then you look at that lead later that they put in on the little thing, and there's nothing. I hate it.
I really love that little koala bear. Thank you. Oh, my daughter would love that. Oh, let me best.
No, but I'm talking about when you actually have a good conversation, then they don't get it. Like
I get it. Yeah.
I went to a conference one time with a company, and they didn't have a plan of how to capture leads. So I was like, okay, let me generate a table. So I put together a spreadsheet, and I was like, after you have a conversation, come here, put in the info. And then I ranked them, and I was like, green means they're a good lead and we should follow up with them immediately. There was a whole side note on that one, but it's not complicated. And it really, if you are investing, because look, we just said $10,000 for a very small little baby startup kiosk. These big booths, they are 6 figures. Some of them are 7 figures at these big conferences. It is a lot of money that your company is investing. And maybe it's just for the brand awareness. Maybe it's just because you want to get acquired. Maybe it's just because you need a Series B, C, whatever funding investment coming up. But they're investing. And if people are coming to talk to you, maybe they're blowing smoke, but maybe they do actually want to learn more and potentially be a buyer of your solution, of your product, of your suite. Yeah. And so the least you can do is capture information. So I'm sure there is a company out there that is using ambient scribing for conferences, but it would be like whoever is, they should start doing it.
Yeah, I've got I got branding for it. We'll call them the booth leash. Another one.
And it also zaps you if you walk too far away from the booth. It gives you a zzz.
And every time
if you stand with your back. If you stand with your back to the hallway, it zaps you.
Yeah. I think, I mean, you're onto something there. So it's triggered a thought in my mind. So you and I are kind of approaching this from the point of view of dealing with the outflow. I think we need a counterpoint to this. I think I need to reach out to a couple of my old chief marketing officer friends and colleagues and maybe have one of them on here and talk about their perspective. Because clearly, to your point, there is a lot of reasons why these companies invest the money in attending. And so I think that although we could be accused of being overly jaundiced about this based on, you know, our sort of evaluation of the experiences and what works and what doesn't work, I think I would like to hear from somebody who this is a part of their core mission in terms of
Look, good event marketers are brilliant. I have worked with some brilliant people that when you get there, they are organized, they know what's going on. Like any emergency that pops up, they're like, don't worry, I got this. You need this? I got you.
They are the cat herders. They are amazing.
I love it. I love it. So for all of our potential cynicism sometimes around conferences, because they are long days, it's a lot of work. And you know, if you're not in healthcare technology sales and you're one of the developers or the people who are just sat back in the office, it can kind of be like, okay, you're complaining about the fact that you went to Vegas for a week and you had lovely dinners and you didn't have to answer any emails. Like, oh yeah, so sad for you. I'm so sad that you had to hear about fake AI at every booth. But, you know, swings and roundabouts.
So Bethany, let's close out on that conference thing, because I think that's a good note. But I do know that you are going to be, hopefully, fingers crossed, traveling this weekend. And we were chatting about that off air. And I think that the whole concept of talking about exactly what you just covered, that the glamour of travel and dinners and the elite statuses on airlines and hotels that you get that get you perks, et cetera, et cetera. There is a lot of kind of what I would call jealousy that occurs, you know, looking at salespeople and going, well, what is that like? So I would like to try and see if we can grab a special episode, maybe whilst you're actually on your travels or afterwards. So let's try and pull something together on that and talk about what does life on the road actually mean? You know, what are the joys and what are the pains associated with all of those perks? And what is being a million miler or having lifetime status with a hotel mean?
Yes, I can also share my sneaky tip of how to get your entire first year of dating paid for by your company. I mean, it was HR compliant. It was fine. Yeah. But, you know, it's a good way to save money. It's economical.
Definitely share that story because well, I'll save my comments on that until we get to cover that story. But for now, gentle listener, gentle viewer, thank you very much for joining us for this episode talking about summarizing health, but talking about conference life in general and what it means, what to get out of it, etc. And until the next time, keep Haverin.
Bye.